Hi, everyone. I'm going to give everyone a minute to log in from the waiting room. I know we have a lot of people registered today, and I will get the closed captions up and running, which always makes me nervous because it goes to another screen. So hopefully we will be back with closed captions up in the corner. All right, I'm always relieved when that works. So you should see a red closed caption box. It says live, and I'm going to put the streaming link in the chat for anyone who is not able to see it on their screen. Closed captions. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Christy Baglow, the Director of Statewide Training at Florida Legal Services. I am thrilled to have this panel with us today. Melissa Duncan has put together such an all-star panel for us today, and I'm really excited to learn from everyone on the panel. I am an introvert myself, so I look forward to learning from everybody about how to network better. So we have Melissa Duncan from Legal Aid of Palm Beach County, Takisha Miles, also from Legal Aid of Palm Beach County, Robin Rosenberg from Florida's Children First, and Cardi Jackson from Southern Poverty Law Center. So thank you all so much for being here today, and I will turn it over to Melissa.
Great, thanks, Christy. So as the networking committee of the public interest law section of the Florida Bar, we were charged with kind of gathering this group and helping the public interest attorneys learn about networking to increase professionalism, both personally and in their practice areas. So this wonderful panel is here. I'm honored that everyone is joining. And I'm going to jump right in. One of the things that I've read about networking is that everyone should have an elevator pitch, kind of like a quick description of what they are so that it would be quick enough but complete enough that you could discuss it in an elevator. So I'm going to ask our panelists to give their own speech of little quick elevator pitch of who they are and take it away. Robin, would you like to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robin Rosenberg. I'm the Deputy Director of Florida's Children First. I'm a children's rights attorney working for a legal aid nonprofit that works on systemic reform to make the child welfare system and foster care better for all children who have to experience it. I get the pleasure of working with attorneys and folks around the state, all with the same aim of making things better for kids. So nice to meet you.
Thanks, Robin. Takisha, would you like to go next?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Takisha Miles. I am the supervising attorney of the housing programs at Legal Aid Society of Palm Beach County and the elder law programs. Legal Aid Society is a free service to residents of Palm Beach County. We look at trying to serve clients, provide access to justice to the people who don't have a voice. And we are your community partner for emerging needs and emerging trends here in Palm Beach County. Welcome to our event.
Thanks, Takisha. Bacardi, you're up next.
Hi there, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cardi Jackson. I am the managing attorney for the Miami office and the senior supervising attorney for our children's rights practice group at the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is one of the oldest and largest civil rights organizations that is specifically focused on fighting for the most vulnerable people in the Deep South. In children's rights, we focus on 3 areas. We work to stop the school to prison pipeline. We work to make sure that our students have access to mental health and health services. And finally, we focus on equity and education, which for us is particularly focused on ensuring that we keep public funds in public schools. And beyond all of that, I am the mother of 3 school-age children in Broward County who attend public schools.
Terrific. Thanks, Bacardi. And I see that Christy just put in the chat, and I was going to totally say that next, that we love a conversation with this panel. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat, and hopefully, Christy, you'll keep track of that and let us know if they're coming up. But in the meantime, I'll keep going with some things that I want to learn from these panelists. So the first one, I'm going to ask to all 3 of you, and so we can figure out the order. But why would networking be useful for public interest attorneys? That's why we're here today. So if you can give some specific examples of that, that would be great. Let's start with Takisha this time, please.
Well, one of the things that I find useful, and I consider networking as a public interest attorney to be an ambassador for my organization. So as I'm going to bar association events, going to meetings with other agencies and state officials, I am an ambassador for Legal Aid Society of Palm Beach County. I am speaking about the good that we do, the difference we make, and I want to make sure that I put the best foot forward on behalf of my organization, because it could result in increased funding, increased partnerships, or opportunities for us to expand our organization. So I choose to do my networking to make sure I'm an ambassador.
Thanks, Takisha. Bacardi, same question. Why is networking useful for public interest attorneys?
Oh, there are so many reasons. Let me count the ways. So first, I would say as for any attorney, just as a practitioner, as somebody who's showing up in court, it is really important to just know the profession and know the bar. They say good attorneys know the law, great attorneys know the judges. Network with judges. It's critically important that when you walk into a courtroom, people have seen you at some bar event. That matters. It matters that you walk in with a level of credibility and some recognition. Secondly, for me, it's critically important, as a lot of the work that we do is done in coalition. It's done with co-counsel. So I'm always looking for, how do we expand our network? How do we make sure we are connected to community, driven by community? How do we hear about the cases that we bring? We're an impact litigation focused organization. So we are not the grassroots, and there are so many amazing grassroots organizations doing this work every day. And so for us to understand what the trends are, where we can move the needle in systemic ways, we need the network of folks who are doing the work on the ground every day, who can tell us where those problem points are. And then also, there's a lot of stuff that people call us for that we can't do, and we don't know, we don't have the capacity for it. It's not in our wheelhouse. So having sources around that you can refer your clients to, or people who are calling you for help, that's critically important. And finally, always looking for potential speakers or people to write op-eds. So everywhere I go, I'm listening and trying to find folks who might be able to support the work we do, whether that's possibly showing up, in Tallahassee to testify, whether it's, lifting up voices if we can get you published, or even if it's to, try to steal away somebody's employees to come over and work with us. So there's lots of good reasons to network.
That's incredible. Robin, anything else? You've had two good examples, amazing, before you. Anything else that you would add about why networking is useful for public interest attorneys?
Sure, I'll add two things. I mean, I agree with everything that both folks have already said. So number one is, you don't know until you know how valuable that contact could be. It could be something, a connection you made 5 years ago, and totally out of the blue is the most relevant person to help you with what you're working on. And so when you're in situations, you never know in the future how valuable that connection is going to be. So one, you don't know. And two, I would just kind of amplify what Bacardi said. And I would say it's about leverage, because legal aid, public interest lawyers generally are under-resourced, and there's very little we can do on our own, but there is so much we can do with connections with other public interest lawyers, with other lawyers in the bar generally, and people in the community. So it provides leverage points to really magnify the work that you're doing for your clients. So those would be the two that I would add.
These are incredible. So let's talk about some of the details of this. So, it's great. All of the reasons that you've brought forward are terrific. What do you do with those actual business cards when you meet someone, or how do you organize all these people that you've met? For me, my whole purse is full of random business cards, or my desk has a stack of them. Do you have other suggestions that you would make, other than my systems, which aren't so great? And Robin, I'll send that question to you, please.
So I'm going to share a couple of tips that I've gotten from other people, and I can't say that I always use them, but I think they're good tips. So number one is a tip I got from my father, And that is when you're exchanging business cards, if you're speaking with somebody who doesn't have one and you want to get their information, you can use one of your business cards, have them write the note on the back, but then tear off the corner so you don't mistakenly hand that business card to another person. So you'll know there's a note on the back. He also would have me recommended making a note on the back of the business card. What in the conversation did you learn about that person? They've also got a fifth grader, they like to swim, whatever kind of things came up that might be useful to know in the future about that person. You can make the note on the back. And the second tip I got from my colleague, Victor Panoff at Disability Rights Florida. Victor is very sight impaired. And his tip was when you're at an event, like a conference, CLE or whatever, and you're getting business cards, he puts them in the folder for his name tag. So usually have a name tag with a little plastic folder or whatever, and then he keeps them by event. So if he remembers, oh, I was at that bar conference in June and I met somebody, he can go and pull the name tag from that bar conference in June, and the business card will be in there. So he can connect it to the time that he met the person. So other than that, if you can scan them in, put them into your contact system so you can retrieve them that way, there's lots of tech to do that. I'm not very good about that, but I have certainly photocopied masses of my business cards and sent them to our office to include in our email system. So those are my little actual tips.
I love those. Those are fantastic. And it looks like Lisa Brody also commented that that's a great tip. And I like the identifying details when, you know, that your dad suggests about writing them. I always consider that like the Devil Wears Prada suggestion, where the assistant has to walk behind Glenn Close and say, no, Meryl Streep. No, which one is it? Anyway, Devil Wears Prada, like where she's like, oh, this is John, he has 2 kids, one's this one. But it is really helpful to know those little details about people and make that connection. So Takisha, can I ask you please, what are your best networking strategies?
So I have to say my secret weapon, my go-to strategy may not work for everyone, but it works for me. One of the things that I like to do is as I sign up for committees, I participate, I'm an active member of the Palm Beach County Bar, local bars, voluntary bar associations. But I sign up, especially for the Cunningham Bar Association, which is our local African American Bar Association. And I sign up for the Holland Luncheon Committee every year. And every year you will see me at the check-in table. I am the place you stop at. You have my name tag and says Takisha Miles Legal Aid, and I'm helping you find your name tag. I am learning your face and your name. You see me as the first person that you enter, and you're going to know my face and my name. And so I have done that every year since I will say, a baby lawyer. But that is something that helps me so much. People remember me from being at the check-in table. They remember my name, remember my face. And I think that has been my secret weapon over the years, is to be at the check-in table at large events and be the person that they first see when they enter a room. And I'm the one that's helping them get into the room.
I love that. And actually, as you're speaking, I'm recalling our own office events, our big pro bono recognition function. And I do always see you at that front table. Now I know your secrets. All right. That's good, Takisha. Thank you. So Bacardi, do you have particular venues that you think are some of the best for networking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I tend to go to, or at least pre-COVID, I used to go to a lot of conferences and events. And the other thing that I do a lot of is I serve on boards. And so for me, that's an incredible network of people who you don't just meet and exchange business cards, but you get to know because you're working on things together, and they get to know you. They get to see your work ethic. They just get to see your expertise. And that's an incredible place to network, because you also just, can pick up the phone and get that person to pay attention in a different way than if you're just cold calling people, even if you've met them at a conference. So I find that a really useful place. The other thing, of course, is bar events and bar organizations like this one. If you are able to join an Ends of Court, I highly recommend an Ends of Court. That's where judges hang out. and you can get to know them in social settings. You can have dinner with them. And if you don't know about Ends of Court, which is something I learned late in my career, look it up and find the one near you and see if you can find an entree into that Ends of Court. And then in terms of like sort of I'm terrible. I used to be pre-children. I was one of those people who would clean my desk every day. I don't do that anymore. So I'm like you, Melissa, with a stack of business cards, and they used to live in a Rolodex way back when. But one of the things, my sister is an expert networker, and one of the things she does is she won't even take people's business cards. She just connects with them on LinkedIn. And then she is diligent enough to go back and send them a message after, the first night of the conference or right after she meets them. And I think that's an excellent way. I've started to try to use LinkedIn more too, because it does keep you from having that stack, and it automatically connects you with information about them, a photo of them. And so you can remember who they are. And then the other thing that I've started to do, just because I have an email box I can't control either, and I've got so many things that are happening and coming at me, I try to connect people right away to somebody else in my office. So if I meet someone who I know is just an incredible person for us to work with, I immediately send that message to someone else and try to make that connection. And then when I was earlier in my career, the other thing that I would recommend is finding a reason to reach out to folks you meet. If you come across an article that would be relevant to them, if you come across a conference they might want to know about, I would recommend that as well. And then one last thing I just learned about, which is Clubhouse. And I don't know how many of you have heard about this new platform. It's kind of a new social media craze that was first, invitation only, and only a few people could get in. And so lots of people are trying to get in, but it is actually a really interesting platform. And I have met some other advocates on that platform. Again, I would recommend being in those spaces where you could have real conversations with people about issues you care about.
That's great. I definitely want to delve into the social media aspect of networking, but I did have a question about the boards that you're on. How do you choose to be on certain boards and make sure they're not in conflict potentially with what your clients are, but in the same scope of increasing your network?
It's interesting. Once you serve on one board, that's kind of the doorway to a whole bunch more, because then people are recruiting you constantly. For us, we have a process internally where we have to get approval to serve on board. So we do that vetting as part of our organization, but it is something to think about. And oftentimes I'm on boards that aren't necessarily directly connected to what I do. And so even though they're not directly connected, inevitably you find people on those boards who do all kinds of other services, and oftentimes will still be incredible assets in your networking profile, who you could just call, even if it's somebody, say, I meet people who are journalists. You always need to know good journalists. You meet people who are, doing other things, and it broadens also your knowledge about what else is happening in the community. And even if you wanted to think about next steps in your personal career. So.
That's great. Takisha, I was going to come to you next too. Go for it. Yeah.
So, one of the things about board service that is so important. I got my entree into board service when I was at a community meeting on affordable housing, happened to be sitting next to the executive director for Adoptive Family, and just had, small talk as we were sitting, waiting for the meeting to start, or, even snickering about whatever was happening in the meeting. We just got to know each other in that, 2-hour space. Lo and behold, I come back to work the next day. She's emailed my executive director. She wants me to join her board. And I joined the board of Adoptive Family, made my way to president and chair of the board, at the height of my time at Adoptive Family. But it's important to get yourself in rooms that are other than lawyers. And I think that is one of the wonderful things about my work with Adoptive Family. I am the only practicing lawyer on the board. They are corporate executives from FPL. There are CPAs. There are money managers. They're philanthropists, the people just who give money. And so I have learned so much by being in the room and being with them that have expanded my horizons, have taught me about fundraising, that have taught me about special events that I can bring back to my actual 9-to-5 job at Legal Aid. So I would encourage anyone to get involved in board service. And I think that shows how networking can be so powerful, that me sitting next to this person in a meeting and us talking and exchanging cards, and then the next day having that opportunity then to serve on her board of directors. And that has been, I've been on their board for a long time.
And Takisha, when you're the only attorney, you're going to inevitably be on the bylaws committee. So be
Correct.
ready for that.
If I can jump in, this is fantastic so far. I'm learning so much, but we had a question and I think this is the perfect time for it. Given the remote working environment at the moment and knowing that public interest attorneys are balancing a lot, how do you suggest that public interest lawyers authentically connect with other collaborators? Live is usually best, but everyone's time is limited. Do you have suggestions?
I don't want to take up too much space, but I'll just say really quickly, I think that this is the perfect time to network. When you used to have to go beg somebody for money for a ticket in a hotel room, you can connect at almost every conference right now, and most of them are free. This has opened up such a world of opportunity for networking and attending conferences and learning things and expanding your knowledge. There are so many things happening online, even if you just start, Google searching and looking at organizations that are in the spaces you want to be on. There's all kinds of webinars. It's just the absolute perfect time to do that. So I would recommend jumping on Zoom regularly and often and seeing what you can find.
That's a terrific answer. Anyone else? Okay. I did have going back to the boards for just a second, as a public interest attorney, I always feel like, the boards are there for fundraising. And so how can you bring your assets as a public interest attorney to the board without thinking that you also have to raise funds for another nonprofit organization?
Every board needs a worker bee. There needs to be worker bees, and those people are the people that will, I wouldn't join a board, as a public interest lawyer that had a give or get, where I had to, have a minimum to fundraise. That would be challenging. But definitely every board also needs worker bees, and the things that you can do, you can review the bylaws, you can, deal with when there are issues about personnel policy changes for the organization. You can use your talent in other ways. And I think as lawyers, we do have the ability to use our talent in other ways that can be of service to the organization.
That's great. And then I would ask also either Takisha Bacardi or Robin, but on the board question, because I think that's a great opportunity that as a public interest attorney, I typically avoid that involvement. And so because of those reasons, that fundraising where I'm like, oh, another place to try to, fundraise. So that's great. Were your organizations welcoming to you being on boards and understanding that it may take some time away from your day-to-day business, or did you have to convince them of that? And if so, did you have any suggestions?
I happen to be fortunate that our executive director, Robert Burdish at Legal Aid Society of Palm Beach County, is also on the Boys and Girls Club board. He's on other boards, and he does value board service. He values bar leadership. My previous employer did not. And so they wouldn't pay my bar dues for my voluntary bars. They didn't value that. So you're going to have to kind of find a way, if you're in an organization that does not value it, find a way, it's going to be costly because those happy hours rack up and all those membership fees and those things rack up. But you do, if it's something that's important to you, you got to go out and do it for yourself.
Yeah, and I would just add that oftentimes you can find some boards, and that sometimes will determine whether I say yes or no is what hours they meet. So it is first important question is when do they normally meet? You can do those things outside of office hours. I think I came to my organization on like 6 or 7 boards, so I've culled back. But some boards only meet quarterly, and some boards need you more as a strategy partner. So you can find different boards that, some do meet monthly and have committee meetings every bi-weekly. Those may not be the ones you want to jump on, but you can try to find the ones that have that balance that work for you. Another great place to start is, and I forget the exact name, but I was on the Community Action Agency. So that was a government sponsored kind of board that then can pull you into other boards as well, where you can, get some government service. And it's very fascinating and interesting to be on those boards too.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so Christy started off saying that she was introverted and that it made her hesitant or possibly to jump in, although you'd never tell from your introductions and all your presentations, Christy. Robin, do you have any suggestions for fellow attorneys who might be shy or have trouble in a social setting, or just the rest of us with COVID and me being more awkward because I haven't been in an office with other people?
Yeah. Well, I'm like right on that border. If you take the Myers-Briggs test and you get the introvert extrovert line, sometimes I'm on one side, sometimes I'm on the other. So I don't derive a lot of energy from being in a crowd of people, but I derive a lot of energy from learning about what people are doing. And so I think if you focus on not this room of people, but in making connections with a handful of people in that room where you're networking, and really taking a few minutes to get to know them, right? So there's a little bit of a balance if you're trying to meet a bunch of people in a room and taking the time and not spending all your time with one person, but taking enough time to get to know enough about that person to file in the back of your head what they're about, what they do, what they're interested in. And if you keep your focus on that one-to-one connection, and trying to find ways of how you're connected to somebody who might be like a random stranger, right? Because it goes back to what I said before of you never know, right? You may go into a networking event with your eye on a person that you've thought you needed to meet, is important to something that you're doing, and that may or may not pan out, but there may be 2 or 3 other people in there that can be incredibly important to your career or your work. And so I guess my best tip is just keep it focused on that one-to-one level, and trying to make a personal connection with people. And you didn't make it through law school without the capacity to do that, and you're not in the field of public interest law if you don't care about people. And it's just a room full of people that you don't know why you care about them yet, but once you get to know them, there is a reason that you will care about them. So that's my best tip.
I'd love to add on to that, and I think that's excellent advice, Robin. And that's exactly kind of how I have learned some amazing things. So oftentimes, I was part of an organization where and this was when I was in private practice, where all of the people who were in-house had orange name tags and the other people had purple name tags. And so everybody would just swarm and grab all the orange name tags. If they walked in any room, everybody's trying to get business. And so it was this just mad dash, and you would see people kind of hanging out. And one of the things I just started doing was finding somebody who was sitting by themselves and just go sit next to them. Say, join that table, or just, and in fact, I can tell you right now, 3 of my best friends in the world are people I met just like that. We were in whatever the venue was, they were standing by themselves or sitting by themselves, and I just walked up and just started having a conversation. So you don't always have to go where everybody's swarming or think you've got to have the biggest name or the biggest whoever's in the room. Everybody has an incredible story, as Robin was saying, and when you are genuinely interested in people, you will find some amazing gems in the room. Just, people who might be the quietest ones there can turn out to be some really important people in your life.
That's great. Robin and Bacardi, I love that. It totally reminds me of at my daughter's school, they have a buddy bench. So if someone's sitting on the buddy bench, they're kind of quiet and they want to find a buddy. So then you can go to the buddy bench, but that's your table of finding someone. They just didn't know that they were at the buddy bench with that sitting by themselves at that table. But I think that's awesome. You talked, Bacardi, you mentioned LinkedIn. And so I wanted to talk more about social media, because like even the question about our virtual world now, social media is everywhere. So I'm going to start with Takisha. If you could tell me how you use social media for networking.
So although I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I primarily use Facebook. So Facebook will have some of my family friends and friends from high school, but there are also friends in the community, friends from different law firms, people I've met at different bar functions, other lawyers, and so and friends from law school. And so I kind of use my social media, my Facebook page to keep in touch, to promote things that legal aid is doing, encourage, my position on certain things. The one problem with social media and the one thing the advice to give is to make sure that you're careful what you post, and that you're careful the pictures you post. And so, I know that people have not, received job offers because of the activity that they have on Facebook. And so I just would, limit it to being very professional. You still use it for, fighting the power if you want to fight the power, but also be careful that, other people in your network will see it, that, may have a negative effect.
That's good. That's good advice. Bacardi, besides LinkedIn, do you use any other social media for professional networking?
Yeah, like Takisha, I'm also mostly on Facebook just because that's the one I tend to have time for and I started out on and I know best. And so I have a, very broad social network, and I think that is really good advice. Be careful about what's posted publicly versus what's posted for just your friends. And I also find on Facebook, there are lots of subgroups and groups you can join. I'm in a number of attorney groups that have various interests, and that's often a place I'll use if I need to find an attorney to help with something or an expertise. But I also use Facebook to post all of our, webinars and our events, and I'm pretty certain that I help to get people sometimes to the room just by posting in your networks, and people who have time will jump on and check you out. At least my mom is on most of them that I post, so she
Hopefully she's here. Hi, Bacardi.
she tends to find me, and so I know I at least have one friendly person in the audience. But that's one good way to use it. And then for LinkedIn, I think of LinkedIn more as sort of my my place to do research, right? It's the place that if I'm going to a room and I need to know who's in it, I go to LinkedIn. Make sure you pick that little setting where they don't know you're looking at their profile. So because people sometimes find that a little weird. But it was a thing I learned. Like I didn't even realize as I sort of switched jobs this last time how much people Google folks and all of that, because I had just been at one place for so long, and I'm old. But it is an amazing thing that you can, when you go to LinkedIn and you can, find just really important information about people, see what they are interested in, the things you need to know when you're walking in the room. But you can also figure out where you're connected, and that gives you a point of conversation, which is another good thing that you can use it for. So I think it's very valuable. I wish I was hip enough to be on IG more. I'm on it on IG and TikTok just to see my children's videos, but I do wish I were a little more hip and with it. I just don't have the time to quite figure that out yet, but I will.
I think it was pretty hip to even say IG because my brain had to go Instagram. So that's good. You're way hipper than me. So you both mentioned kind of like your network, including both personal and professional contacts. How do you keep those separate to make sure? I mean, I know Takisha, you mentioned like be cautious of what you put out there if everyone's going to see it. Are there any other details that you add to keep your, like, do you have a professional Facebook and then a personal, or they're all together?
Yeah, unfortunately, everything is all together. I have one Facebook page and everything is together. But one of the things that I learned, I worked on a judicial campaign this last, 2 cycles ago. And I think I learned a lot about what can go on Facebook and not go on Facebook. And I learned about that you can share information to select group of people. And so, if there's something that I want to share that might be a little much for Facebook for the general crowd, I know I can select certain friends to send that to. And so that is something that if there is something that you want to share that it would not be appropriate for the broader audience, you can through Messenger or through, selecting the friends you want to share with to do that.
That's great. And then Bacardi, you also mentioned right. I mean, I Google not everyone, present company excluded, but I definitely in my work, certainly Google and look up people. And do you ever have in the work that we do is sometimes, though I think it's all amazing, there certainly are some people that could look you up and then, not maybe don't look at it as positively or favorably. do you have any experiences or cautionary tales about using social media connected to your work and how that could affect you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that I'm at a stage in my career and an age where I kind of just am here living authentically, and people just have to deal with it. But I do think that's a different story if you're starting out in your career and you're newer. You have to be more cautious, and you should be. I am not all that cautious, I must admit. And I just live out loud, and so that is just where I am in my space and place and time. But I do also tend to select who I don't just friend. I think I've got like maybe 400 pending friend requests on Facebook or something. I don't just friend everybody on Facebook. I do see LinkedIn as my professional network. And I see Facebook as more of the place where I have more of a social or personal connection to people. Though I do also have some professional folks who I consider friends who are also there as well.
That totally makes sense. Okay. I also had, so this is kind of more of a, like, carrying off of a private practice, and this question could go to anyone, but how do you use this networking to tie in the private bar or private practice folks to benefit your clients?
I can go first. So
That'd be great.
Yeah. Our organization is just 2 attorneys, and we don't represent anyone directly. So if we're going to get things done, we need to do it through colleagues, whether they're at local legal aid programs or through the private bar. And so to me, the network is just tremendous. And I can have a foster kid who needs an intellectual property attorney because they're writing a book, and I can find a private practice attorney for them. And, the fact is that most lawyers in private practice want to be helpful, whether or not they personally find their own work rewarding. Some of them do, some of them don't, but they like helping other people and having the opportunity, especially if it can be in a limited way. So I can get a bankruptcy attorney for a parent who needs that, or former foster youth. I'm doing that right now. So I think giving people the opportunity to help the folks in your client population, they actually really want to do that. They feel good about that. And I think this networking thing is kind of, it's a two-way street. So like Bacardi said, you have things that you can help them with. You can share an article they might find of interest, or tell them about a webinar, or just, say, hey, I saw you in the paper, congratulations. But ask for help. That's actually a great way to make someone a friend, is to ask them to help you. And so don't ever feel shy about asking an attorney to either help you with your case because they have that expertise, or to take the case or a piece of a matter for a client, because they actually, they may tell you no, and it's no skin off your back, you try somebody else. But both offering help and always do that. Make yourself available with your expertise, kindly and freely. You're not going to lose billable hours if you talk to somebody and help them out, and then ask them for help. That's my suggestion.
Well, I know I've asked each of you for help, so that's very, I see the benefits of that. You are also giving some examples, and I'd love to get to some of those. I had a terrible, I know this, I'm not on the panel, I'm the moderator, but now it's going to be a therapy session, because I had a terrible networking experience where, not terrible, but I was at an anniversary party for an appellate law firm who we'd used for pro bono counsel on one of my cases. And I saw someone leaning against the wall. So Bacardi, you'd think that was the buddy bench, like I should talk to them. And I even heard him mention legal aid. And I was like, oh, great. And I looked and I was like, I heard you talking about legal aid. And he's like, yeah, I work there. And I was like, in Palm Beach County? And he said, yes. And I said, that's where I work. How long have you, which program are you in? And he said, I'm in our Ryan White project. And I said, that's great. And so I said, well, how long have you been doing that? And he's like, oh, about a year. And I said, oh, wow. And I said, where did you work before that? He goes, at legal aid. And I said, really? Doing what? And he said, I was in our housing project. And I said, really? And I said, how long were you there? He was like, oh, a few years. And I was like, Oh, so you're someone that I've been in the same office with for 4 years and I have no idea who you are. But I mean, it's a big office. And, you know, we have like 125 people, 22 different projects. So even networking within our office could be useful, certainly. So that's my example of things that went horribly wrong, but I was trying. Do you have any examples? And I'd like each of you to answer this question if possible. Stories of either good networking stories where, like, you know, those networks blew your case or your professional experiences out of the park, or something that you would have done differently. Or I could just be the one with the story that you look like an idiot. That I do. Yeah.
Well, I don't have a story. I do have rules. And so I will impart my rules. 1 drink minimum. So if you're at a happy hour, and there will be happy hours after this, after the pandemic, 1 drink. You know, most bar associations, they give you a couple drink tickets. You give your extra drink tickets away and make new friends. You will be the best friend of that new person that gets a drink on you. But 1 drink, I've seen too many young lawyer division events that go awry when someone's had too many of the free drinks. So keep that in mind. Choose what you eat wisely. So no chicken wings that are gonna be all over your fingers because you can't shake anyone's hand and have sticky fingers. I usually try to eat like before I start work in the room so that, you know, and go to the bathroom, check my teeth and make sure that I don't have pieces of broccoli or something, you know, awkward there. Because not many people are be willing to tell you there's a problem. So I just say, just, you know, those 2 like ground rules, as you know, could make things be a disaster for you if you don't mind those.
I love those. And I will always tell you something's in your teeth, and I expect the reciprocity. Thank you. I love that. Robin or Bacardi, any examples of good stories, cautions?
I think it is so normal and often for me that I'm always reaching out to my network that it's almost hard for me to even distinguish when I'm not. So you know, just recently, for instance, we had a major issue with a client who was about to be deported. And I immediately thought about, who do I know at the White House? Who do I know in Congress? And I just started calling people. I'm like, I know you're not the person I need to talk to, but you know who is. Who do I need to talk to? And that is, you know, it's just part and parcel of my work. Same thing with legislative stuff. We're working on a major issue around the Baker Act, and that Baker Act 37,000 children every year in Florida. It is a horrific practice. And so, you know, part of my network is Leadership Florida. Reached out to folks I know who are now in the legislature and, you know, saying, looking for bill sponsors or looking for people who can speak out on these things. So I can't even think of a day when I haven't had to think about who's in my network that I've met through some organization, a school affiliation. And that's another place I would also recommend is stay in touch with your alumni groups. That's why you went to the school you went to. It was not for whatever you learned in, you know, first year of math. It was for the people you met there, and the people who use those networks, you know, really get a lot of benefit from it. So that's, you know, it's just really integrated in my life that my network is always part of my work.
That's terrific.
I'll just tell a little, my happy story for the week was actually in the Washington Post earlier this week. So we get a lot of calls from people who have know about kids in the child welfare system in Florida that are really in a pickle. And we don't have any investigative authority. We don't have boots on the ground everywhere. But we always try to connect to the key decision makers. You know, if we can't either help the young person get an attorney for themselves, or so we got a contact, and I'm not even sure really where it came from, but it's an entity that helps reunite children who are separated, immigrant children who are separated from their families. And they had a little boy in Orlando who was subject of about to be termination of parental rights proceedings, who was brought here by a cousin and then came into the child welfare system because the cousin was abusive. But he had parents at home in Guatemala who loved him, who wanted him back. And he was facing a system that was about to terminate his parental rights. And through our network and folks that we knew. We went right to the agency in charge of that child welfare agency, connected them with the national organization, and that little boy was sent home and is reunited with his family. And when you face our systems can be, our court process can be so lengthy and complicated, and not everybody has quality representation, but so much can be resolved by getting a hold of the right people in charge and putting them in touch with the situation that they probably don't even know about. And so I just think you just never know where your connections are going to come to fruition to help people. And if you're willing to take the time, there's a lot of people we can't actually help, but we can take 15 or 20 minutes and explain the law to them and suggest where they can go or what questions to ask. And it's just worth it to take the time to do that. It will repay you and your clients.
Fantastic. These are all great stories. No, amazing. Christy, do we have any other questions or asking our
I haven't seen any
participants?
Or being shy. Yeah, put yourself out there. But we did have a good tip come in from Sally. She said another attorney showed her an app called Cam Card, and you can take a picture of the business card and then it puts the information into your contact list. So that sounds easy and painless. I love that because I have a drawer full of cards and I'm like, what was that person's name? And I'm terrible with names. Sometimes I can't remember at all. So that's not very helpful.
Well, that's fantastic. So I have one more question, and it's basically about anyone new. So right now we have our networks from this local area, hopefully a state area. Maybe some of us even have national contacts. If you move and you had to start over in a different place, what's the first thing that you would do to start building a new network? Robin, you moved recently. No, yeah.
Yes, I did. Well, it's a kind of a weird situation for me because my family moved to Kansas in July of 2019, but I continue to work in Florida. But of course, I care about children here and what's happening in the system. And I think like everything, you start by doing things that are of interest to you and your family. So I got involved with my son's Cub Scout troop. And, it just so happened that one of the parents runs the child protective investigations in the county. There's not a lawyer club, but the CASA which is like their version of Guardian Ad Litem, was holding a fundraiser. So I just went because I figured these would be my people, right? This would be my tribe, my people, and ended up sitting next to their new executive director of the CASA, getting the lay of the land. So, but with all of it, do things that you like, because if you don't join clubs or organizations for entities that you really don't care anything about, because it won't be genuine or of interest. So you make connections with people that you have common interest in, affinity groups, affinity bars, but things, because it's your genuineness and your competence. I think Bacardi said it earlier. You really want to show people that you know what you're doing and that you follow through. And then those connections will come out of that authentic engagement and things that you're interested in.
That's amazing. I wanted to let the participants know that CLE credit is pending. So as soon as we get that information, we will send it out to everyone participating today. And we appreciate all of your time in participating in this public interest law section networking committee panel. And thank you so much to our panelists, Takisha, Robin, and Bacardi, and for Christy for organizing everything. Really wonderful. This was such a great way to spend my lunchtime. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. I love this. Thank you to the panelists and attendees. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.